Hi everyone, Rick Russell here. Stand by for channel markers. After watching our video about Battleship Massachusetts and Operation Torch, viewers asked, why was the U.S. Navy fighting the French Navy in 1942? We'll try to provide an answer in today's video. The Second World War in Europe began in September 1939, but let's pick up the story in June 1940 when the German army defeated the French and British armies in less than 7 weeks of fighting and entered Paris unopposed on June 14th. Weeks earlier, with the army fighting but losing badly, the Navy's plan was to sail for British ports, but the idea of continuing the fight from Great Britain ended when talk of a surrender became serious. The fleet would be needed as a bargaining chip. The fates of the new sister battleships, Richelieu and Jean Bart, illustrate the French Navy's dilemma. Richelieu, which was working up at Brest, would have fled to the Clyde, but as late as June 13th, she was conducting full power trials. Jean Bart fired her boilers for the first time on June 14th. On June 19th, Richelieu departed Brest for Dakar, Senegal, while Jean Bart departed Saint-Nazaire for Casablanca in French Morocco. Both ships barely escaped advancing German armor. Without getting into the details of French politics, which were a hot mess, the French government fell. Retired Marshal Philip Pétain, the hero of Verdun during the First World War, became the new prime minister. He supported an armistice. Hitler set harsh terms, such as the occupation, but not so harsh that Pétain couldn't accept them. To that end, the agreement allowed France to keep its empire and navy, and an armistice was signed on June 22nd. It's difficult to underestimate the impact of the shocking end to the Battle of France on officials in London and Washington. The Royal Navy and the French Army were the linchpins of Western European security. Now the British feared the Germans would seize the French Navy and use French colonies in Africa to threaten its position in the Mediterranean. More than anything, the events that took place over the next several weeks explain why the U.S. Navy found itself fighting the French Navy, including Jean Bart, in 1942. First, the British government recognized Brigadier General Charles de Gaulle as the leader of Free France, a formal government in exile. From his base in London, de Gaulle began to build up the Free French forces, including the Free French naval forces. Second, on July 3rd, after French naval officers had refused a British demand to surrender or demilitarize their ships at Mers el-Kebir in Algeria, Force H, with HMS Hood as flagship, attacked them, sank an old battleship, and damaged several others, killing some 1,300 French sailors. That same night, British authorities impounded more than 200 French vessels in British ports. Perhaps not surprisingly, France broke off diplomatic relations with Great Britain. At Dakar, on July 8th, the Royal Navy attacked Richelieu for the first time, but not the last. 2 days later, on July 10th, the French Third Republic voted literally to reconstitute itself in the city of Vichy as the French state and move closer to active collaboration with Germany. In Washington, with France finished and Great Britain facing the prospect of invasion in the summer of 1940, the idea of the U.S. eventually having to fight the Axis alone and on a global scale was on the minds of President Franklin Roosevelt and the Navy. 2 enormous naval appropriations were enacted, including the Two-Ocean Navy Act, which President Roosevelt signed into law on July 19th. For starters, it included the 5th and 6th Iowa-class battleships, 5 Montana-class battleships, and 6 Alaska-class large cruisers. It doubled the number of fleet carriers the Navy already had. What was more important in the long run, though, was the U.S. government choosing to maintain relations with Vichy France, providing something of a diplomatic and even economic counterbalance to the Nazis, especially in North Africa. As retired Royal Navy Captain Stephen Roskill wrote, quote, "Where violent measures were taken against French ships to secure British ends, they accomplished no more than partial success and aroused passionate hatred in French breasts. Where negotiation was employed, it was successful, and where no measures were taken, as against the large number of ships in Algiers and Toulon, the French honored their undertaking that none of them should fall into German or Italian hands. Loyal to the French tricolor and having had nothing to do with the debacle of 1940, after the Royal Navy's attacks on them, the French Navy in North Africa hated the British as much as the Germans. So when the otherwise dormant French Navy sortied against an invasion force that had arrived off Casablanca on the morning of November 8, 1942, they chose to fight to protect French sovereign territory from these invaders, whoever they were. Only when they observed the huge battle ensigns of the American cruisers did they realize they were fighting the navy of their country's traditional friend. That's all for this channel marker. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment or recommend another subject below. As always, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.